They say family always remembers you. That's a lie. Because when my own son forgot my birthday for the 6th year in a row, I realized something terrible. I had become invisible in the very family I built. But that day, I decided to make sure they would never ignore me again. The story of my quiet rebellion began with a single sound: ping. A $3.4 million purchase alert flashed on Daniel's phone, halfway across Charleston. My son's face, I imagine, went white. He probably thought it was fraud. It was. But not the kind he expected. While his world started spinning, mine had just stopped long enough for me to breathe again. The sea breeze brushed through the open glass doors of my new home on Sullivan's Island. I stood there, barefoot on marble floors, holding a half-filled glass of champagne. The ocean was endless. Calm, mine. For the first time in my life, I had bought something that didn't need anyone else's approval. I could already picture Daniel's voice on the other end of the phone, full of that polished politeness he used whenever he was angry. "Mom, are you okay? Did someone hack your account?" "No, Daniel. No one hacked me. I finally hacked my own life." I took a sip and smiled. The night before, I'd sat alone in my Charleston townhouse. A single candle flickered on a grocery store cupcake. 65 years old, and not one call. Daniel and his wife Lena were out of town again, supposedly celebrating Gloria Brooks' birthday, Lena's mother. Poor Gloria. Her health always seemed to fail around the same week every year. Coincidence? Hardly. I scrolled through social media, and there it was, a picture of them smiling at some fancy restaurant in Savannah. Caption: "Family time is the best time." I laughed. It was almost poetic how the people who forgot me still called themselves a family. Every year, I'd waited for the call, the text, the excuse, and every year I accepted it, pretending it didn't hurt. But something shifted inside me that night. A tiny snap, like the quiet break of thread pulled too tight. Maybe it was the loneliness, or maybe it was Aunt Celeste's voice still echoing in my memory. "Don't let them shrink you, Evelyn. Live loudly." I looked around my empty dining table and whispered to myself, "I think I will." The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. The sky outside was gray, the city still asleep. I brewed coffee, sat on the porch, and for once, didn't check my phone. Then, almost on impulse, no. On instinct, I opened my laptop and typed a message to my real estate agent, Evelyn Carter. "Find me a home with a view of the ocean. Agent Jennifer. Any specific budget?" Evelyn. No limits. I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. By noon, Jennifer had lined up 3 properties on Sullivan's Island. The first 2 were lovely but predictable. White fences, manicured lawns, the kind of houses that made you apologize for stepping on the carpet. Then came the third one. When the gates opened, I knew. The ocean stretched endlessly behind floor-to-ceiling windows. Light danced on the walls. The house didn't whisper comfort. It shouted freedom. Jennifer talked about square footage, the Italian marble, the custom kitchen. I didn't hear a word. My eyes locked on the balcony where the ocean wind moved the curtains like slow breaths. I stepped outside. The salty air hit my face. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cried, sharp, lonely, free, and I realized this is what peace sounds like, Jennifer asked softly. "Would you like to think about it?" I turned to her, smiling for the first time that day. "No, I'd like to buy it." At the law office, my hands didn't shake once. Not when they handed me the contract, not when the pen touched the paper, not even when I saw the final number, $30,000 and $400,000. Paid in full. Most people would have thought I was reckless. But I wasn't reckless. I was awake. When I left the office, I didn't feel old or lonely or forgotten. I felt alive. That evening, I stood on the terrace of my new home. The sun dipped low, staining the ocean orange and gold. The glass in my hand caught the light like a tiny fire. No calls from Daniel yet. I figured it would take a few hours before he saw the alert, but I didn't care. For once, the silence wasn't empty, or it was earned. I took out my phone, snapped a picture of the horizon, and posted it with a caption that felt like a declaration. Sometimes the best gifts are the ones you give yourself. Simple, elegant, true. It didn't take long. At first, one notification, Daniel. "Mom, What did you just buy? Then another. Lena. Please tell me this is a joke. And finally, Gloria. Evelyn, dear, are you feeling all right? I heard about some purchase. Their concern came fast, wrapped in fake kindness. But beneath every polite word, I could hear it. Panic. Daniel's first call buzzed through. I ignored it. Then again. Then again. On the fourth attempt, I answered, letting him stew for a second before speaking. Mom. His voice cracked with alarm. Did you buy a house? Yes, I said plainly. A house by the ocean. You mean the notification I just got is real? You spent $3 million? 3.4, I corrected gently. A pause. Then, Mom, why would you do that? Without talking to me first? That line, without talking to me first, said everything. He wasn't worried about me. He was worried about control. I smiled to myself and replied, because, darling, I didn't need to. While Daniel's voice climbed into panic, mine stayed calm. He spoke like a banker. I answered like a poet. It threw him off. He tried again, softer this time. Mom, we just want what's best for you. I looked out at the water. That's funny. I wanted the same thing for myself. He sighed, muttered something about, Lena will call you later, and hung up. I watched the sunset swallow the horizon and whispered, go ahead, call. I've got all the time in the world. That night, I unpacked the small suitcase I'd brought, one photo of Daniel as a boy, one framed picture of Aunt Celeste, the only woman who ever told me I was capable of more. She'd left me her fortune the year before, $8 million in quiet investments, a secret between her lawyer and me. When I read her letter, I cried harder than I had in years. Don't fade, Evelyn. You have a light in you that terrifies small people. Let it shine, even if it blinds them. I'd kept that letter hidden in a drawer, afraid of what it might awaken. Now, standing in my new living room, surrounded by nothing but echoes and sea air, I understood every word. I wasn't running away. I was finally stepping into the life I'd been too polite to claim. Morning came soft and blue. I brewed coffee, barefoot, the way I used to before life turned into lists and obligations. The ocean was glassy, the house silent except for distant waves. For a moment, I almost believed peace would last. Then the phone buzzed again, a group call this time. Daniel, Lena and Gloria all talking over each other, voices thick with concern. Evelyn, honey, we just want to understand. Mom, this is a big decision. Evelyn, have you been under stress lately? 3 voices, 1 message. We don't trust you. I let them talk until their words blended into white noise. Then I said quietly, thank you for your concern. But I'm not asking for permission, and I hung up. Hours passed, no more calls. No more noise, just the steady rhythm of the sea. I sat by the open doors, watching the horizon melt into dusk, and realized something simple. Silence wasn't my enemy anymore. It was proof that I'd finally escaped their grip. That evening, I lit a candle on the balcony. The flames swayed in the salt wind, fragile but unbroken, just like me. I took another picture, not for them this time, but for myself, a reminder of the first day I chose peace over guilt. By nightfall, my post had gone quiet online, a few comments from distant relatives, a few polite emojis from old friends. But I knew, somewhere in Charleston, my family was sitting around a dinner table, whispering my name like it was a problem that needed solving. Let them whisper. Let them worry. Because for the first time in 65 years, I wasn't the one waiting for a phone call. They were. And as I stood by the glass railing, the ocean stretching endlessly before me, I whispered into the wind, I used to think rebellion had to be loud. Turns out it can be silent and still shake the world. The waves answered back, crashing softly against the rocks below. I smiled, finished my champagne, and let the sound of the sea carry me into sleep, the calm before every storm that was yet to come. They say silence is golden, but mine didn't last long. By the second morning in my new home, the quiet peace of the waves was broken by a storm of buzzing phones and desperate voices. Mom, pick up your phone. Evelyn, I'm worried about you. Sweetheart, this isn't like you. Maybe you're under too much stress. The words came layered with false care, each tone dripping with the same message. We need to control you before you ruin our comfort. I didn't answer. I let their calls stack up like waves hitting the rocks. Predictable, exhausting, meaningless. Instead, I opened another box of belongings and pulled out my favorite painting. A simple seascape I'd bought decades ago when I still had dreams of living near the water. I hung it above the fireplace. It felt right, like it had finally found its home. Every ping and vibration from my phone became background noise. The only sound that mattered was the ocean breeze rushing through my open balcony doors. My family could wait. For once, my life couldn't. By afternoon, the tone of their messages shifted from concern to control. Daniel. Mom, you're scaring us. Did someone convince you to do this? Lena. Evelyn, please call us. We just want to help. Gloria. My dear, big decisions like this should never be made alone. You could lose everything. Lose everything. Funny. I'd already lost what mattered. Their respect, their attention, their love. What else was there to lose? I closed the phone and turned off notifications completely. The silence that followed felt like a blessing. I spent the rest of the day unpacking, filling the empty space with memories that belonged to me, photographs from my youth, old letters from Aunt Celeste, and a box of seashells I'd collected when Daniel was a boy. Every item reminded me of who I was before motherhood became servitude. As I arranged the photos on the mantel, one slipped out, a faded picture from my 60th birthday. The memory came flooding back like a wave I hadn't braced for. 5 years ago, I'd waited all day for Daniel and Lena. They'd promised dinner, said they'd booked somewhere special. By evening, the table was still set, the candles burned down, and the phone stayed silent. I'd ended up eating leftover pasta alone. When I finally called Daniel, he'd said softly, "Mom, I'm so sorry. Gloria had a health scare. We'll make it up to you next week." They never did. Another year, same pattern. A text instead of a visit, then later, no text at all. Every year, I whispered to the quiet room. They said it wasn't their fault. But neglect feels the same no matter what excuse it wears. That line lingered in my mind, and I almost laughed. Maybe I'd put it on a pillow someday. The next morning, a car pulled up the long driveway. Through the window, I saw Daniel's figure stepping out, his suit slightly wrinkled. His movements rushed. He didn't even wait to be let in. The front door swung open with a sharp thud. "Mom?" His voice echoed through the hall. "Where are you?" I was in the kitchen, slicing fruit, calm as ever. "In here," I answered. When he saw me, his jaw tightened. "You really bought this place?" I did. He walked to the window, staring at the ocean like it offended him. "This is insane," he muttered. "You can't just buy a mansion on impulse." I placed the knife down and looked at him. My son, a grown man, speaking to me like I was a child who'd spent her allowance unwisely. "Impulse?" I said softly. "You think freedom is an impulse?" He turned to me, frustration flashing in his eyes. "Mom, you need to think about your future." "About stability," I smiled. "My future is already here. And stability, Daniel, doesn't always look like control." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck, pacing. "I'm not trying to insult you. Yes, you are," I interrupted gently. "You always do it politely, though. You've inherited your father's tone. Calm, reasonable, and suffocating." He froze. "That's not fair." "Neither is assuming your mother can't handle her own life." His mouth opened, then closed again. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the ocean outside. Finally, he sighed. "Mom, I just don't understand where all this money came from. You couldn't have saved this much." And there it was, the heart of his panic. Not concern for me. Concern about money. I turned, walked to the cabinet where I kept Aunt Celeste's letter, and handed it to him. He unfolded it, scanning quickly, then slower. His eyes widened. "What is this?" he asked quietly. "The truth," I said. "Aunt Celeste left me her entire estate last year. Over $8 million. He blinked, speechless. You never told me." "I didn't need to," I replied. "It was her wish that I use it for myself. And that's exactly what I'm doing." Daniel sank into a chair. $8 million. "Mom, that's enough to live the rest of my life without asking for permission," I said, finishing his sentence. He looked at me for a long time. I could see the storm of thoughts behind his eyes. Confusion, disbelief, and something else. Fear. For years, I'd been the soft one, the woman who waited, forgave, excused. But in that room, everything shifted. Daniel's voice softened. "Why didn't you trust me with this?" I smiled faintly. "Because I knew you'd try to manage it," he frowned. "I wouldn't." "You already are," I cut in. "You showed up here to fix something that isn't broken. You think because I'm older, I can't make choices. But Daniel, my age doesn't make me weak. It makes me aware." He stared at me. The kind of look a man gives when he realizes the person he's underestimated just flipped the entire script. For the first time in our lives, Daniel didn't know what to say. He glanced around, taking in the tall windows, the soft blue walls, the gentle hum of waves outside. "It's beautiful," he admitted quietly. I nodded. "It is. I've dreamed of this view since before you were born." He rubbed his forehead. "Lena's going to lose it when she finds out." I tilted my head. "Does Lena know about this visit?" He hesitated. "No, but she'll want to understand." "What's going on?" The air grew heavy. There was something in the way he said it, a nervousness, that didn't belong to a concerned son, but to a man caught between loyalty and guilt. I decided not to push. Not yet. Instead, I poured us both tea. The silence stretched. He stared into his cup like it might give him answers. "Mom," he said finally, "I'm happy you're independent, really. But please, be careful. People take advantage of women your age with money like this." "People like who?" I asked. He shrugged, looking away. "Just people." There it was again. That vague concern, that invisible cage of control. I smiled politely and said, "Don't worry, Daniel. I know exactly who to trust." He nodded, but I saw it. The flicker of worry in his eyes. The unease of realizing the woman he thought he could manage had just outgrown his protection. As he stood to leave, he looked around once more like he was memorizing the place. "Promise me you'll call if you need anything." "I promise," I said, though we both knew I wouldn't. He paused at the door. "Does Lena know about this? Inheritance?" The question hung in the air. His voice was calm, but his fingers tightened around his keys. I met his eyes and replied softly, "Not yet." "Why?" He hesitated. "She'll just want to understand how everything works now." Then he left, quickly, almost nervously, his car pulling out of the driveway faster than usual. That night, as the moonlight pooled over the waves, I thought about the look on his face when I told him the truth. Shock, fear, calculation. For years, I had been the quiet mother, the listener, the comforter, the one who stayed behind while everyone else built their own lives. But now I was the unpredictable one. The element they couldn't control, and that terrified them. I stood by the window watching the tide roll in, and realized the backlash had only begun. Because people don't panic when you're weak. They panic when you stop being weak. The next morning, I found a text from Daniel waiting on my phone. "Mom, can we talk again soon? Lena has some questions about the money. She's worried you might be getting scammed. Don't do anything until we all talk, okay?" I stared at the message for a long time. Then, without replying, I set the phone face down and walked outside. The sea was roaring louder today, as if warning me that peace never lasts. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and said to myself, they used to worry when I was silent. Now they'll worry because I'm not. The waves crashed hard against the rocks, spraying mist over the deck. I didn't flinch. The rebellion had begun. And it was far from over. It started on a quiet Saturday morning, the kind of morning that makes you believe the world might actually be kind again. The ocean outside my window shimmered silver, sunlight breaking over calm waves. I brewed my coffee, humming softly, still wearing the calm from the day before. Then, tires crunched on the gravel driveway. At first, I thought it was Daniel. He'd texted the night before, something about wanting to visit soon. But when I looked through the blinds, my heart sank. It wasn't Daniel. It was Lena. And behind her, in a wide hat and oversized sunglasses, was her mother, Gloria Brooks. They stepped out of the car with perfect smiles, like a pair of actors ready for a scene they'd rehearsed too many times. Gloria carried a polished leather folder. Lena clutched a bouquet of lilies, the kind of flower people bring when they want to look innocent. I didn't move. I just watched as they walked up the steps, chatting too cheerfully, their laughter thin and forced. Then the doorbell rang, soft but sharp. Ding. Once. Then again. I could have ignored it. I almost did. But I wanted to see how far they'd go, so I opened the door. Evelyn, Gloria exclaimed, her voice sugary and warm. We thought we'd surprise you. Her words floated on the air like perfume, sweet, fake, suffocating. They walked in before I could even answer. Lena's eyes darted around, scanning the house. It's nice, she said, her smile tight. Gloria added, so peaceful here. Perfect for retirement. I almost laughed. Retirement? I just moved in. Gloria opened her folder as if she hadn't heard me. Oh, I know, dear, but we wanted to bring you some options. Just in case you ever feel this house is too big to manage, she spread out brochures. Across my dining table, glossy pictures of pastel buildings with captions like Serenity Village and Golden Horizons. Lena chimed in softly. They have great amenities, on-site nurses, daily activities, everything you'd ever need. I looked at the papers. Rows of strangers smiling in wheelchairs, identical rooms with identical curtains, the smell of control disguised as care. Looked back at Gloria. She smiled wider. The kind of smile people use when they think you're too naive to notice they're insulting you. Gloria folded her hands. We just want you somewhere safe, Evelyn, with people your age. This oceanfront place? It's beautiful, but it's a lot to handle. Her tone softened. Practice sympathy. I know how hard it is, dear, being alone at your age. Sometimes we make impulsive decisions. There it was, impulsive decisions. The same phrase Daniel had used, so he'd told them everything. I sat down slowly, letting the moment stretch. You mean somewhere easy to manage, don't you? Her eyes flickered on a small, involuntary flinch. No, that's not what I meant at all. Then what did you mean? She hesitated. I meant, well, we all worry. Daniel especially. He says you've been acting different lately. Lena nodded quickly, playing the dutiful daughter-in-law. He's just worried, that's all. We all are. Worried, I repeated, tasting the word like something sour. Because I bought a house? Because you didn't talk to anyone before you did, Gloria corrected. That's not like you. I smiled, cold and calm. Maybe this is like me, and you just never bothered to see it. The tension thickened. Lena shifted uncomfortably, eyes flicking to her mother for guidance. Gloria, however, didn't blink. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, voice lowering. Evelyn, dear, I understand independence, but there's a difference between confidence and recklessness. You could get taken advantage of. I tilted my head. By who, you? The silence that followed was long enough to hear the waves outside. Gloria's lips pressed into a thin line. Now that's not fair. No, I said softly. What's not fair is pretending this is about concern when it's about control. Lena jumped in, desperate to smooth things over. We're just trying to help. Help me do what, Lena? Move into a home that makes you feel more comfortable about my life? She blinked, startled. No, You forget, I interrupted, my voice calm but steady. I've played polite for decades. I know exactly what it looks like when someone wants something but calls it care. Gloria's mask slipped, her tone sharpened. Evelyn, you're being unreasonable. You've always been a little dramatic, but this is dangerous behavior. Dangerous? I repeated. Buying a home with money I earned and inherited? Her eyes hardened. You're isolating yourself. People will talk, I laughed, low and bitter. They already do, Gloria. You just don't like it when the conversation isn't about you. Lena's face turned pale. Mom, but Gloria was already rising from her chair, the sweetness gone completely. You're being selfish, Evelyn. You're putting Daniel through stress he doesn't deserve. That word, selfish, hit me like cold water. For years, I'd heard it every time I tried to have a thought that wasn't convenient. I stood too, matching her height. Selfish? I spent 40 years giving up pieces of myself so everyone else could breathe easier. This house is the first thing I've ever done for me. If that's selfish, then I'll wear it like a crown. Gloria's mouth tightened. Her eyes were full of something ugly now. The kind of resentment that can't hide behind polite smiles anymore. You'll regret this, she said quietly. You can't manage this life alone. I already am, I answered. And it's beautiful. For a moment, no one moved. The air felt charged, thick. Then Lena finally spoke, voice trembling. Maybe we should go. Gloria didn't argue. She gathered her folders, snapping them closed hard enough to echo through the room. The lilies she'd brought lay forgotten on the table, petals already starting to curl. At the door, she turned back once more. "Daniel only wanted to protect you," she said. "But I can see now you don't want anyone's help. When things fall apart, don't expect us to pick up the pieces." I met her gaze and smiled. "I won't. I've learned to clean up my own messes." Gloria's face twisted just slightly before she turned away. Lena followed, silent and uneasy. When the door shut, the quiet hit me like a wave of relief. I leaned against the wall, breathing slowly, the adrenaline finally fading. The house was still, but no longer peaceful. Their perfume lingered in the air like smoke after a fire. For years, I'd seen Gloria as mildly irritating, too opinionated, too polished. But that morning, I saw something different. A predator hiding behind pearls. The way she'd said, "You'll regret this," replayed in my mind. It wasn't a warning. It was a promise. I looked around my home, the sunlight streaming through the glass, the ocean stretching beyond the balcony, and I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was curious. Curious about why Gloria cared so much about my choices. Curious why Daniel seemed afraid instead of proud. Curious what exactly they were trying to protect or hide. Because people don't try this hard to control you unless they have something to lose when you wake up. I poured myself another cup of coffee and walked outside to the balcony. The breeze was warm, but my skin prickled with unease. I replayed the conversation in my head. Every word, every fake smile. Gloria had come prepared. Folders, rehearsed phrases, a practiced tone. This wasn't concern. It was strategy. They'd underestimated me. They thought guilt would still work, that my heart would melt the moment someone said, "We're worried." But that trick had expired the same moment they forgot my birthday. I stared out at the horizon and whispered to the wind, "You can only gaslight someone who still doubts their own light," and for the first time in a long time, I didn't. Later that evening, I found one of Gloria's folders still on the table. It must have fallen when she stormed out. I opened it out of curiosity. Inside were notes, not typed, handwritten, dates, phone numbers, my bank's name. My pulse quickened. At the bottom of the page, a scribbled note in red ink read, "Confirm account access once she agrees to downsize." I stared at it for a long time, the words blurring, my breath growing shallow. That wasn't concern. That was planning. I placed the paper down carefully, forcing myself to breathe. Outside, the sky darkened, the waves crashing louder. Somewhere deep inside, the hurt turned into something sharper. Not fear. Focus. I whispered into the quiet room. "You came here to manage me, Gloria. But you just handed me my reason to dig deeper." The ocean roared, as if in agreement. And though the air was heavy, I smiled. A small, knowing smile, because I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake, and the real storm hadn't even started. The day after Gloria's visit, the house felt colder. The morning light was sharp, almost judgmental, cutting through the glass like it wanted to reveal what I hadn't yet seen. I spent the day cleaning, though nothing was dirty. Sometimes we clean because we can't control anything else. As I dusted the study shelves, my eyes landed on a familiar shape. A small mahogany box tucked behind stacks of old journals. It was my late husband's. I hadn't opened it in years. The key was still taped to the bottom drawer. My hands hesitated for just a second before unlocking it. Inside was the faint smell of cedar and paper. A collection of things he'd kept hidden. Bills, bank slips, documents I never asked about. One folder, thick and sealed with an old elastic band, had a single word written across the front in his neat handwriting. Daniel. My chest tightened. I sat down slowly, the chair creaking under me, and pulled the folder open. The first few pages looked harmless. A few bank statements, some letters. Then deeper inside, I found it. Forms with my name printed neatly at the top. My signature at the bottom. Only, it wasn't my signature. I'd signed my name thousands of times in my life, but never like that. The curves were wrong. The E too sharp. The ink too heavy. The next document was worse, a loan agreement, dated 3 years ago. For nearly $150,000. The borrower's name, Evelyn Carter, The co-signer, Daniel Carter. I flipped through the next pages with trembling fingers. More loans, more forged signatures, credit card applications, all under my name. A quiet numbness crawled up my spine. I wasn't just hurt. I was betrayed on paper. I laid everything out on the desk, every form and statement. Like puzzle pieces of a life, I didn't realize I'd been living. Dates, amounts, signatures. And then something caught my eye. The dates lined up too perfectly. Every time there was a Gloria emergency, a sudden surgery, a hospital bill, a treatment she said she couldn't afford, there was also a new loan in my name. Every single one. I whispered to myself. Every time Gloria was sick, Daniel borrowed more money. In my name. It wasn't an accident, it was a system, a pattern built on guilt and trust. The tears came slowly, not loud or messy, just silent drops that stained the papers. It wasn't just about money. It was about how easily they'd used my kindness as currency. I remembered it all now. The calls that always came with panic in Lena's voice. Mom, Gloria's collapsed again. Mom, we're so sorry to ask, but she needs another round of treatment. Mom, you know we'll pay you back. And I had believed them. I'd wired money. Signed checks. Told myself I was helping family. I'd even prayed for Gloria's health. Now I realized I should have prayed for my own sanity. By evening, the room looked like a crime scene. Papers everywhere. Evidence of betrayal glowing in the soft yellow light. I sank back in my chair numb, watching the sky outside turn from blue to black. The ocean was still roaring, but I couldn't hear it anymore. All I could hear was my pulse, steady and angry. When the first wave of disbelief passed, anger took its place, deep, quiet, terrifying anger, not the kind that screams, the kind that plans. I picked up the phone and called Richard Langford, my lawyer and an old friend of my family. He answered on the second ring. Evelyn, how are you? I took a deep breath. Richard, I need your help. And I need it to stay between us. His tone shifted instantly. What happened? I looked down at the papers scattered around me. I think my son's been taking loans under my name. And I think Gloria Brooks has something to do with it. The next morning, I met Richard at his downtown office, a quiet, oak-paneled room that smelled faintly of coffee and old books. He greeted me kindly, but his smile faded the moment he saw my face. You've found something, he said. I've found enough to lose faith in my own blood, I replied. We spread the documents across his desk. He examined each one carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with every page. Finally, he leaned back. Evelyn, these aren't just mistakes. This is deliberate fraud. The words hit me like ice. Fraud, I repeated quietly. Yes. Whoever did this forged your signature multiple times. Some of these accounts go back 5 years. You could have been charged for debt you didn't even know existed. I stared at him, the weight of it pressing down. Can it be fixed? He nodded slowly. Yes, but it'll take time. I'll have to contact the banks, verify the handwriting, and open an investigation. Then he added, we'll also need to find out where the money went. I swallowed hard. I already know where. He looked up curious. To Gloria, I said. Or whatever her real name is. Over the next few hours, Richard worked through the records, typing quickly, comparing statements. When he finally looked up from his screen, his face was pale. Evelyn, he said quietly, almost every transaction leads back to the same account, an offshore transfer from Charleston Bank to an account in the name of G. Brooks Holdings. Brooks, I repeated. As in Gloria Brooks? He nodded. But that's not all. The account's registration doesn't match her current identity. It's tied to an older alias, one flagged years ago in an IRS audit. My stomach twisted. An alias? Yes, he said, eyes darkening. It seems she's been living under multiple names. We'll need to confirm which one is real. I sat in stunned silence. The air felt heavier, like the walls themselves were absorbing the truth. For a long moment, I didn't speak. The reality of it all was too large to fit in my chest. Daniel, my son, had forged my name. Lena, his wife, had played innocent, and Gloria, the woman who smiled in my kitchen, 2 days ago, had been orchestrating the entire thing. Everything they'd said about concern, safety, family. It was all camouflage. Every phone call, Every check-in, every invitation, all of it. Part of a slow theft of trust, I whispered. Almost to myself. They didn't just steal my money. They stole my belief that I was loved. Richard's voice softened. Evelyn, we'll take care of this. But you need to stay calm and careful. Don't confront them yet. Let me gather proof first, I nodded. I'm not sure calm is something I can feel anymore, Richard. When I left his office, the world outside felt different. People walked by, laughing, drinking coffee, living lives untouched by betrayal. And there I was, moving through them like a ghost carrying too much truth. The drive home was quiet. Even the radio stayed off. My reflection in the car window looked older, not from time, but from clarity. I parked by the seaside, stepped out, and let the wind hit me full in the face. The waves crashed harder than usual, wild and relentless. I thought about the pattern again. Gloria's illnesses, Daniel's fake concern, Lena's polished smiles. It all made sense now. They'd never wanted me safe. They'd wanted me silent, but silence was done serving them. When I got home, Richard called again. His voice was tense. Evelyn, I've done a deeper background check. You might want to sit down. I sank into my armchair. What did you find? He hesitated, then said it slowly, like the words themselves might break something. Mrs. Carter, that's not even her real name. The world went still. What do you mean? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Gloria Brooks doesn't exist, he said. Her birth records, her social security, all fake. She's gone by at least 4 different identities in the past 20 years. Her real name was once Gloria Hale, I froze. Hale? Yes, he said grimly. And she has a record. Financial fraud, identity theft, multiple aliases. She's been investigated before, but always slipped away before charges stuck. I pressed a hand to my chest. So she's a professional, Richard sighed. Yes. And if your documents were forged under her influence, this isn't just a family issue. It's a crime ring. I closed my eyes. Images of Gloria's fake smiles, her soft voice, her delicate hands adjusting her pearls, all flashed through my mind. The way she'd looked at my home. The way she'd said, "You'll regret this." I understood it now. That wasn't advice. It was a threat. That night, I sat in my living room with every light off, staring out at the black waves. The truth had finally surfaced, ugly and undeniable. My son wasn't the only one tangled in this web. He was a pawn. And the woman who pretended to be family had been stealing from me long before I even met her. I could have screamed, cried broken something, but instead I whispered into the dark, "You wanted control, Gloria. But now you've given me a reason to fight." The ocean outside roared like thunder, as if echoing my vow, and in that sound, I found something I hadn't felt in years. Purpose, because betrayal doesn't end you. It wakes you. And I was wide awake now. By the time dawn broke, I hadn't slept. The ocean outside was silver and still, as if holding its breath with me. The truth about Gloria Brooks, or rather, Gloria Hale, still echoed in my head like a name carved into stone. A con artist. Fraud charges in 3 states, dozens of aliases. Richard's words from the night before played on repeat. She's been doing this for years, Evelyn. Families, estates, wills. She preys on the elderly and the lonely. I poured a cup of coffee I didn't intend to drink. My hands shook slightly, not from fear, but from fury that had nowhere to go. Gloria hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen trust, piece by piece, until I was too numb to notice, and she'd done it all while smiling over my kitchen table. The worst part? She'd used my son to do it. Later that morning, Richard called again. Evelyn, I've forwarded all the findings to a private investigator. We'll track her down. But you have to stay alert. She'll sense you're onto her soon. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. What about Daniel? Not yet, he said firmly. He needs to hear the truth at the right time. We need evidence first. Don't confront anyone. But it was too late for that advice to sink in, because as he said those words, I heard it, the sound of a car door outside. I walked to the window. A familiar face was walking up my driveway, clutching a small gift bag. It was Lena. She was dressed simply, white sweater, jeans, no jewelry. Her smile was soft, almost shy, the kind people wear when they come to apologize but don't mean it. Evelyn, she called sweetly. I know I should have called first, but I just wanted to see you. Every instinct told me to shut the door, but my curiosity was stronger. I opened it just wide enough. Lena, this is unexpected, she laughed lightly. I just wanted to clear the air. Things got tense lately, and Mom feels terrible about what happened. She handed me the bag. Inside was a snow globe. The kind you'd find in an airport gift shop. A small lighthouse sat in the center, surrounded by fake snow. From Gloria, she said. She wanted you to have it. I studied it for a long moment, then looked up. She must think I'm a fan of false light. Lena blinked, confused. Sorry? Never mind, I said. Come in. We sat in the living room, the air between us too polite, too controlled. She glanced around nervously, her eyes landing briefly on the desk where my husband's folder once sat. So, she began. Mom just wanted to say she's sorry. She thinks maybe things went too far. You know how she gets protective. Protective. That word stung like acid. I leaned back in my chair, my tone calm but deliberate. Is that what she calls it? Protection? Lena hesitated. She worries about you, Evelyn. About how quickly you made these changes. She just wants you safe, I smiled faintly. I'm sure she does. She's quite good at making people feel safe before she steals from them. Lena froze, her fingers tightening around the edge of her cup. What do you mean? She asked softly. I kept my tone casual, almost conversational. Oh, just something Richard mentioned yesterday. About how Gloria Brooks isn't actually Gloria Brooks. The color drained from her face. I don't understand. Of course you do, I said quietly. Because you already knew. She shook her head too quickly. No, that's ridiculous, is it? I interrupted. Because all of the fake loans and forged documents lead to accounts in her name. Accounts that also link back to you. Lena's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for her bag. I leaned forward. Tell me, Lena, how long were you going to keep pretending? Until you drained me completely? She stood abruptly. I think I should go. Sit down, I said. Calm but firm. She didn't. She backed away toward the door. I don't know what you think you know. Evelyn, but you're making a mistake. No, I said quietly. I'm finally not. She turned and left without another word, the door slamming behind her. When the echo faded, I realized I was shaking, not with fear, but with adrenaline. The house was silent again, but this time it wasn't peaceful. It was charged, like the air before lightning strikes. The snow globe sat on the coffee table, still spinning from where I'd set it. Down. Fake snow swirling around a lighthouse that never really glowed. It was almost poetic, a gift from a liar meant to distract from the truth. I stared at it until the flakes settled, and then the phone rang. It was Richard again. Evelyn. We found something else. My pulse quickened. What is it? His tone was measured, but I could hear the tension beneath it. I cross-referenced Gloria's records. She's used many aliases over the years. But something interesting came up this morning. He paused. Go on, I said. One of her former names was listed as Gloria Hale, and another person frequently connected to her in old property records is Lena Hale. My heart stopped. Hale. I whispered. Yes, I'm sorry, Evelyn, he said quietly. Lena Brooks, your daughter-in-law, isn't who she says she is. She's Gloria Hale's daughter. The room tilted for a second, as if the floor itself had shifted. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. You're sure? Positive. Birth records, tax files, even an old mugshot. It's her. She changed her name before she met Daniel. My breath came shallow. Images began flashing in my mind like broken film reels. Every family dinner, every soft smile, every mom, you're like a second mother to me. Lies, all of it. Lena hadn't fallen in love with my son. She'd found him, handpicked him. A marriage built on manipulation, on long-term access, on trust earned and exploited. They hadn't married for love. They'd married for money. I walked to the window, watching the horizon blur under the weight of my thoughts. My reflection in the glass looked like someone else entirely. Older. Yes, but sharper, harder, I whispered to myself. They married my son to steal from us. The sound of my own voice startled me. It didn't sound like a victim. It sounded like a warning. I saw it all now, moments that once seemed small. but were carefully placed. Lena showing up to my home with Gloria by coincidence, the way she'd always managed Daniel's finances, the gentle nudges. Mom, maybe you should let us handle your accounts. It'll be easier. Every suggestion, every visit, every favor, it all made sense now. Gloria hadn't just orchestrated fraud. She'd orchestrated an entire relationship. They'd infiltrated my family like termites. Slow, quiet, devastating. I sat down, clutching the phone. Not sure who I could even trust anymore. Daniel, my own son. Was he a victim too? Or had he known all along? I remembered his words from our last conversation. Does Lena know about this? The way his voice had cracked, the unease in his eyes, had that been fear or guilt? I couldn't tell anymore, and that uncertainty hurt more than the betrayal itself. When the shaking stopped, I stood. The pieces were finally clear. Gloria, the puppet master. Lena, the perfect disguise. Daniel, the pawn trapped between them. I picked up the snow globe and shook it hard. The fake snow swirling violently inside. Then I slammed it against the table. The glass shattered. Clean, sharp, final, just like my patience, I whispered into the silence. You built your web carefully, Gloria. But you made one mistake, that you forgot the spider doesn't always win. Outside, thunder rumbled over the sea. A storm was coming, both in the sky and in my life, and I was ready for both. Later that night, I sat at my desk, every document laid out neatly before me. I wasn't crying anymore. I was planning. If they wanted a war over my life, they were going to get one. And this time, I wouldn't fight like a mother trying to protect her family. I'd fight like a woman reclaiming her power. Because some truths destroy, yes. But others? They rebuild. And as the rain began to fall outside, tapping softly against the windows, I whispered to the dark, You wanted my silence. Instead, you've given me a voice. The lightning flashed across the sky, and for a moment, it illuminated everything, the papers, the ocean, the broken glass, all pieces of a life that was no longer broken. Just reforged, the web was revealed, and I was ready to tear it apart. The rain hadn't stopped since the night I shattered that snow globe. It drummed against the windows of my seaside home, steady and unrelenting, the kind of storm that felt personal. I stood by the balcony, staring at the waves tearing themselves apart against the rocks. That was how my mind felt, constant, violent, and restless. Then the doorbell rang. For a moment, I thought it was my imagination, but it rang again, firm, impatient. I opened the door to find Daniel standing there, soaked to the bone. His eyes were red, his shoulders heavy. Mom, he said, voice cracking. We need to talk. He walked inside without waiting for permission. His steps echoed through the quiet hall. When he turned to face me, I could see it, guilt etched deep into every line of his face. Mom, he started, I know you know. About the loans, about the money, I didn't speak. I just nodded slowly. He ran a trembling hand through his wet hair. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I just wanted to help Gloria. She said she was dying. She said the treatments were expensive. Treatments? I repeated softly. He nodded. She showed me invoices, prescriptions, everything. I thought I was doing the right thing. I just needed some quick money. She said we'd pay it back when her insurance cleared. My voice stayed calm, though my heart pounded in my chest. So you forged my name? He swallowed hard. It was supposed to be temporary. Without a word, I walked to my desk and opened the folder Richard had given me. I pulled out a stack of papers and laid them in front of him. Temporary? I asked. These are 5 years' worth of temporary decisions. He looked down, eyes widening as he flipped through the pages. Each document screamed the truth he'd tried to bury. Forged signatures, fake authorizations, transactions to offshore accounts. This can't be right, he whispered. Gloria said, Stop saying her name, I snapped. My voice, quiet until now, cut through the room like glass. He looked up, startled. I leaned forward, my tone low and cold. Every one of those treatments was fake. Every emergency, every hospital stay, all of it. She played you, Daniel. She played us. He stared at the papers, disbelief crumbling into horror. She lied to me, he whispered. All this time? He sank to his knees, hands gripping his head. I thought I was helping, he said. She told me you were losing control of your finances. That I was what? I demanded. Old, senile? Easy to trick? He couldn't answer. For a long moment, the only sound was the rain hammering the glass. I took a breath and said quietly, She's been doing this her whole life. And you let her use my love for you as her weapon. Daniel's shoulders shook. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. I wanted to yell, to rage, to ask how he could be so blind. But the sight of him, broken, ashamed, made the anger fade into something heavier. Pity. I reached out, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. He flinched like the touch burned. Daniel, I said softly. I'm angry, but I'm not done being your mother. I'll help you fix this, if you're ready to tell the truth. He looked up at me, tears streaking his face. What do I do? You start by letting me handle it, I said. And you stay away from Gloria and Lena. From now on, you don't talk to them, you don't see them, and you don't believe another word that comes out of their mouths. He nodded weakly. Okay. Hours later, after Daniel had left, the house fell quiet again. I poured myself tea, though my hands still trembled slightly. That was when the phone rang. Unknown number. The screen glowed like a warning. I hesitated for a second before answering. Evelyn Carter. A pause. Then, hello, dear, that voice. Calm, deliberate. Gloria. My throat tightened. You have some nerve calling me. Oh, Evelyn, she said smoothly. I didn't call for hostility. I called for an arrangement. I'm not interested. You should be. Her tone was light, but the meaning was heavy. The kind of voice that smiled while holding a knife. She continued, I know things, Evelyn. About your late husband. About the business deals he made before he died. Some of those decisions weren't exactly legal, were they? My breath hitched. You're bluffing, she chuckled. Am I? You know me better than that. I have documents, files that could make the IRS, even the authorities, very curious about your family's history. I said nothing. I'm willing to keep it all quiet, she went on. If you transfer $3 million to me within 48 hours. Otherwise, your precious reputation and your son's future might look very different. I closed my eyes. Even after all this, she wasn't done. She'd stolen my money, my peace, and now she wanted to take my dignity. Why me? I asked quietly. You already got what you wanted, Gloria sighed, almost pitying. Because you're still standing. And people like you don't know when to fall. Then her tone softened, almost mocking. You were always so proper, Evelyn. Always trying to do the right thing. Well, now's your chance. Protect your family. Be the martyr one last time. The line went dead before I could respond. I lowered the phone slowly, the silence in the room deafening. I sat there for a long time, the cup of tea gone cold beside me. Her words echoed in my mind. Illegal business records. IRS, protect your family. Could she really have proof? I remembered fragments of conversations with my late husband, vague mentions of loopholes and creative accounting. I'd never asked questions then. Maybe I should have. Now the sins of the past had come back dressed in Gloria's voice. That night, the storm broke open completely. Lightning split the sky, thunder rolled across the ocean, and rain battered the balcony like it was trying to wash the world clean. I stepped outside, letting the rain soak through my clothes, the cold biting at my skin. For years, I'd chosen peace over truth, comfort over confrontation. But this was different. This was war. I looked out at the sea and whispered, the old me would have paid to protect their comfort. The new me would rather burn it all down than live afraid. The wind howled like an answer. I stood there, drenched, shaking but steady. Every fear, every guilt, every ounce of shame, gone with the rain. I walked back inside, grabbed my phone and scrolled to the number Richard had sent me a few days earlier. Detective Naomi Park, Financial Crimes Division. I stared at the name for a moment, then pressed call. It rang once, twice, then a calm, clear voice answered. This is Detective Park. I took a deep breath, my voice steady. Detective, my name is Evelyn Carter. I think I have information about a financial fraud case. And a woman named Gloria Hale. There was a pause on the line. Then the tone in her voice changed, sharp, alert. "I've been trying to find her for months," the detective said. "Tell me everything." I looked out the window again. The storm had started to ease. For the first time in a long time, the sound of thunder didn't scare me. It felt like applause, because I'd just declared war. And this time, I was ready to win it. The next morning, the storm was gone. The sea was still wild but calmer, like it, too, had grown tired of the fight. Detective Naomi Park arrived at my house just after sunrise. She was calm, focused, the kind of woman who didn't waste words. She stepped inside, her dark raincoat still dripping, and glanced around the room with quiet precision. "Mrs. Carter," she said, shaking my hand firmly, "I've reviewed everything your lawyer sent me." "You've been through hell," I smiled faintly. "Hell has a nice view from here," she nodded, almost approving. "Good. You'll need that attitude for what comes next." From her bag, she pulled out a small recording device, barely the size of a thumb drive. "This," she said, "records everything. Calls, background noise, all of it. Once Gloria contacts you again, we'll trace her. I'll have surveillance ready on our end." I stared at the device for a moment, then nodded. "So, I'm bait." Naomi met my eyes. "You're the key to catching her." There was something strangely empowering about that. The idea that after all this time being played, I was finally part of the game. I took the recorder, clipped it under my blouse, and exhaled slowly. I'm ready. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the ocean shimmer under the moonlight. The wind whispered through the open door, and I listened, not to the silence, but to myself. For the first time in years, I felt calm. Fear had burned itself out, leaving something stronger in its place. Resolve. When the phone finally rang, I didn't flinch. Unknown number. Again, right on schedule. I pressed record and answered. Evelyn Carter. "Still pretending to be brave, are we?" Gloria's voice oozed through the line like venom disguised as velvet. "Hello, Gloria," I said evenly. "I was wondering when you'd call." "I gave you a chance to end this quietly," she said. "Now it's going to get ugly. The files go public tomorrow unless I get my payment. You'll lose everything." I leaned back in my chair, letting her words hang in the air. She expected fear. Instead, I gave her silence. Then I said quietly, "Do your worst." Gloria hesitated. "Excuse me?" "You heard me," I said. "You can take my money. You can ruin my name. But you'll never take my peace." Her voice sharpened. "You think peace will keep you warm when the world sees what your husband did?" I smiled, a small, tired smile. The world already saw worse and survived. "So will I." For a moment, there was only static on the line. Then she snapped, "You'll regret this." The call ended. I stared at the silent phone, my reflection faint in the glass beside it. Calm, strong, unafraid. Detective Naomi arrived within the hour, her team in tow. She played the audio back on her laptop, Gloria's threats echoing through the room. Naomi's eyes narrowed. "That's enough for a warrant." For the first time, I saw the corner of her mouth lift. "You did well, Evelyn. You kept your composure." I nodded. "It's easier when you've already lost everything worth stealing." Naomi packed up her gear. "We'll find her. I promise." Days later, the fallout began. Like a slow, heavy rain that wouldn't stop, true to her word. Gloria released the files, private ledgers, old business accounts, even some of my late husband's questionable transactions, all dumped online for anyone to... C.News outlets picked it up. Local heiress. Linked to hidden accounts. Old family wealth under. Scrutiny, my phone wouldn't stop. Buzzing, reporters, lawyers, even Daniel. The investigation. Confirmed what I feared. My husband had cut corners in his later years. Nothing violent or criminal, but enough to bring fines, audits, and headlines. I paid them all. Every cent. It hurt, but not as much as silence had. The money didn't matter anymore. Freedom did. Weeks later, Daniel came to see me. He looked different, thinner, older, humbled. There was no arrogance left in him, only quiet shame. "Mom," he said softly, "I divorced Lena." I looked up from the paperwork in my lap. "When?" "Last week," he said. "She disappeared right after Gloria fled. But I filed anyway. I don't want her name attached to mine ever again." There was something raw in his eyes. Pain, but also sincerity. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued, but I want to earn it, however long it takes. I studied him for a long moment, then said quietly, "You can start by being honest with yourself." He nodded. "I will. It wasn't perfect. But it was a start." Months passed. Seasons changed. Then, one afternoon, the call finally came. It was Detective Naomi. "We got them," she said simply. My heart skipped. "Where?" "Spain," she said. "They tried to pull another scam with an elderly investor. We traced the accounts. Same methods, same aliases. Both Gloria and Lena Hale are in custody. International fraud charges are being filed." I closed my eyes, the sound of the ocean outside blending with the faint hum of relief in my chest. "Will they pay?" I asked. Naomi hesitated. "Some money will be recovered. But justice, real justice, that's already yours." I smiled. "Thank you, Detective." After I hung up, I sat quietly for a while. The air smelled like salt and rain. The scent of endings and beginnings all at once. Months later, life felt gentler. The house no longer carried echoes of fear, only the rhythm of the waves, the scratch of brushes on canvas, and the laughter that slowly found its way back. Painting had become my ritual, not for art, but for healing. Each stroke a confession, each color a truth. Sometimes Daniel visited. We'd sit on the balcony sipping tea, watching the sunset. He'd tell me about therapy, about rebuilding his career, about volunteering with financial fraud victims. "I wanted to help people like us," he said one day. I smiled. Then maybe this story wasn't just about loss after all. As the sun began to sink, the world turned gold, the kind of light that makes even scars look beautiful. I set my brush down and looked out at the horizon. The camera of life, if it had one, would have pulled back slowly, waves lapping against the shore. The sound of seagulls, peace at last, my voice, calm. Steady, I would fill the silence. They thought they could scare me into silence, but silence was what they taught me, and voice was what I reclaimed. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't payback, it's peace. The camera would linger on the water, endless, free, before fading to black. The storm had passed, and for the first time in a long time, so had I. The sea kept its promise. It stayed wild, but honest, never pretending to be calm when it wasn't. And maybe that's what life really is, not about keeping storms away, but learning how to stand when they come. Evelyn's story wasn't about revenge. It was about remembering who she was before the world tried to convince her she was small. Before fear, before silence, before guilt. And as the waves carried her reflections away, she realized something powerful. Peace isn't what you find when the noise stops. It's what you claim when you stop needing anyone's permission to exist. Because in the end, freedom isn't loud, it's quiet, it's steady, and it's finally hers. If Evelyn's story touched you, remember this. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You don't owe anyone your silence, your peace, or your forgiveness. Life will test you, but the calm that comes after standing your ground, that's the kind of peace no one can steal. If you felt something today, leave a red hearts in the comments. And if you believe that peace is the best revenge, share this story with someone who needs the reminder. This was The Web Revealed, a story of betrayal, truth, and quiet strength. You've been watching The Final Scar, where every story reminds you, you are stronger than the storm.